Hi, I'm Jeremy Qualls, Athletic Director from Williamson County Schools, and welcome to the WCS Sports Connection Coaches Preview Show. I have two guys with me today, Coach Charles Rathbone of Page High School and Brian Coleman of Summit High School. How are you guys doing today?
Doing very well.
Good. We're going to start with you, Coach Rathbone. I want you to give a little bit of a bio for those like myself, new, about what you've been doing, where you've been, and your coaching experience.
I've been at Williamson County for about 15 years. This is my 14th year at Page High School. I started out in Cleveland, Tennessee. This is my third year as the head football coach at Page. So I've been around there for a while, know the kids pretty well.
And you have extra duties as well as not being football coaches, also being the athletic director for Page. So you have a full plate, don't you?
I sure do, but I enjoy every minute of it.
Tell me a little bit about your coaching staff. I want to know about maybe some spotlights, what each of your coaches do and positions that they work with.
Well, a name that most will be familiar with is Jack Daniels. We pulled him out of retirement, and he's back on the sidelines and doing a great job on the offense. And helping him is Jonathan White, who does the receivers and JV offense coordinator, assistant offense coordinator, does a little bit of everything. He's a great coach. Derek Pack, who's been with me, this is his second year. He's the defensive coordinator, and we brought over Brian Magochi from Heritage to assist him in the defensive coordinating position. So we got a young staff full of energy, a lot of new hires. Cameron Williams and Kevin Traylor and all those guys, they do a great job. Really proud of the job they did last week.
Well, good. It sounds like you have a full staff, and it's always fun. I know that we met with Coach Rector last week, and we were talking about his coaching staff and how fun it is to plan and prepare for practice, knowing that you have a full staff of people out there that will take care of your position work for you, and you can kind of oversee and see what's going on from a wholesome standpoint. And I know it's fun to have those guys getting pumped up about their particular kids that are doing the things that you want them to do in those positions. With that being said, how about a player spotlight of some of the players that you have, some of your seniors, some of your guys that are playing well right now?
Well, I tell you what, we got about 14 seniors, and every single one of those seniors, they're leaders. I mean, they really work hard. They really busted their tail in the weight room this summer. They dedicated, they committed to it. Started with Hunter Adams and Tim Cotton and Cameron Dugan and Van White and TJ Bennett. Those are kind of the interior. We believe that a focus point of the team needs to start from the inside out and build on the line. And being a small school like we are, we don't always have the big old linemen, but the ones we do have need to be strong and technique sound and really get to the football. And they really led the team last week. I mean, it was just an electric atmosphere as far as just their leadership and what they brought to the team. But we also got some guys on the edge with Tyler Thiemann and Matt Fernero and Corey Bond. And Corey's also was elected captain, that bring a lot of speed on the edge, and we can just simply toss the ball out there and let them run with it. And it's always a pleasure to be able to do as a coach. It's kind of relief that you don't have to sit there and bang your head against the wall to try to get 3 or 4 or 5 yards. And of course in the backfield, it all starts with our quarterback, Michael Magochi. I think he's going to be a player that can play at the next level, maybe big time at the next level if we can get the mental part of the game down. But he's got a big arm. He's about 6'4 and a half, 6'5". And Michael Roberts, our running back, who just runs the ball extremely hard. It's hard to bring him down.
Well, speaking of Roberts, he had 128 yards with 3 touchdowns against Lipscomb. We gave you guys the win of the week last week with your big win over Lipscomb, 24-10. You want to talk a little bit about Roberts while we're on that?
Well, Roberts played hard. He ran for 128 yards, 3 touchdowns. He's also a threat to catch the ball out of the backfield. We didn't have to throw to him much this week, but he'll break that first tackle 8, 9 times out of 10. That's what you want a good running back to do. He's motivated. He wants to play at the next level. The offensive line was getting him up on those linebackers for him to break those tackles, and he did a good job. He hit the hole when it was there, and he hit it hard and he hit it fast.
I know that y'all have been working extremely hard in the off season with your camps and coming into the preseason. I know that you guys had a special segment on you done in the Tennessean about your concussion helmets. Tell us a little bit about those concussion helmets.
Well, it's really, they say that it takes away about 30% of the impact. And we had a problem for the last several years with getting concussions, and now, that's the big thing now, is concussions, prevent concussions. And our parents and these kids work extremely hard fundraising money, and we just felt like it was, we need to do our due diligence, and if we're going to raise that money, let's protect them every way we can. So we decided to invest in those helmets, and we'll wear those during every preseason game, scrimmage, every practice. We wear those helmets. Of course, we can't wear them on Friday nights, but everything else we wear. And we've seen a cut down on concussions. Now, I'm not going to accredit that to all the Guardian helmets, I believe it's a lot in the weight room and the neck muscles and those things that help out quite a bit.
Sure.
But we have seen,
So explain to our viewers, these concussion helmets are not something that's internal or inside the helmet. It's actually a protective shell that goes over the top of the helmet. Am I correct on this?
Right, and the shell kind of has little pockets in them, and in the pockets it's full of foam or gel. I don't exactly know what's in it, but it's soft and it goes on the helmets, and it has little bands that come up and buckle around the helmet, and it tightens in the back to keep it on. Okay. And it attaches to the face mask in the back of the helmet, and it's worked out pretty well for us.
And that's interesting because it helps save your kids during that preseason and those 2-a-days and whatever we're doing, building up to the preseason, because you surely don't want to get anybody hurt going into the season. So thank you for that information. Now we're going to switch the tables to Mr. Brian Coleman from Summit High School. Brian, why don't you give us a little bit about where you've been and your past work experience?
This is my first year at Summit High School. I came in January, so this will be my first season there. Previous to the head coach at Forest High School for just 1 year. Before that, I was assistant coach at Riverdale for a couple of years.
Okay, and give us a little bit of coaching spotlight about your guys that you have on staff, what their jobs are.
I've got 4 guys on the varsity staff that have been working extremely hard. Coach Alex Melton is the defensive coordinator. He's also helps in the weight room. Coach Ben Coughlin, he's the offensive coordinator. Coach Jack Dinwiddie, he does the offensive line and outside linebackers, and Coach Kirk Taylor, he does inside linebackers and wide receivers. So we got a smaller coaching staff, so we have a offensive position and a defensive position each coach does.
Okay, all right. And going on with your players, prior to going to players, let's talk about real quick, you both mentioned the weight room and the importance of the weight room in the process of not only getting stronger, but probably helping with technique and everything else. Explain a little bit. I know that you're hands-on in the weight room, Brian, and Coach Melton helps you with that. So tell me a little bit about maybe some procedures that you do in the weight room and some workouts.
Well, first of all, you've got to get the technique down correctly, because you can get injured in the weight room if you don't do the technique right. We do some, I think, they're important football lifts as far as the power clean and the back squat. Or it's the squat, the weight goes on your back. That's why they call it that. And we think that's important now. You've got to have the technique right, and the weight room helps prevent injuries. Like Coach talked about, tightening the neck muscles and things like that to prevent concussions. I mean, you tighten your legs up and you tighten your ligaments up and things like that to prevent injuries.
Sure, and would you both go on the record to say that the power clean is probably the most important football weightlifting exercise, or would you argue that point?
I say for any sport, it's the most important lift.
I 100% agree.
It's power based, and it's an explosion lift. And if you're playing basketball, you're doing a lot of jumping, and that's an explosion lift.
Sure.
Baseball, any sport, I think it's important. The power clean is important.
Right. So let's go on to your players, Coach. Tell me a little bit about some player spotlights that you have at Summit. I know before you got there, we graduated our first full class at Summit. We're a young school. It's now in its 5th year. So tell me a little bit about your kids that you have.
This senior class will be the first 4-year class at Summit High School. They came in as freshmen. This is the first freshman all the way to senior class. The senior class last year actually started off as sophomores. So this is the first 4-year class. And some of these kids, some of our seniors have been playing for 4 years just because there was just sophomores and sophomores and freshmen, and they were forced in to play a varsity schedule. So a lot of them have our 4-year letterman. So they've got a lot of experience. They were beat around a little bit as freshmen. They're working hard. They've worked really, really hard in the weight room. They put in the time into this summer. We were there at 6:30 in the morning. They've worked hard. Cade Vassey, Chase Austin, they were all there in the morning. Cody Campbell, just to name a few of the seniors that have worked hard, that were there every day and trying to push these younger cats.
So let's discuss that a little bit. You said a few things there that catch my attention. You feel like when you go into a situation like Summit, you're a little bit of the underdog right now.
Yes,
you're the young school, and it's just not quite in place yet with the kids coming through year in, year out and doing that of, say, like a Page or anybody else that's been established for a long time. However, with that being, I did go to your game last week hoping to get your first home ever win. And I'm going to say the environment of the pep rally and the environment of your school right now was as high as I've seen just about any school. So I know that your culture there is right. The student body is thirsty for a win, and I know your guys are thirsty for a win.
You're exactly right. The support's been great. The student body's great. The fan support is great. The parent support is great. everything is there. You know, all the things to build a program. I think now these kids, I think they just need success. They need to taste success and to be successful, and hopefully that'll turn things around.
That's a piece of puzzle that a lot of people overlook. That when you come into a situation where you could be the best coach for that scenario, but if the kids have never experienced a winning record or winning period, it's hard to teach them how to get over that hump. But once they get over the hump, it's kind of one of those things that they just get thirsty for more. But it's hard to keep their spirits up. It's hard to keep morale up just because of the fact they've never been in that situation. And that situation will come for you. I know that we played Spring Hill last week, and you ran up against an extremely athletic team in Spring Hill. And you want to talk a little bit about that? I know that Cade Vassey, your middle linebacker, had a really good game on the defensive side of the ball. You want to touch on that game?
He's a good leader for us, playing the middle linebacker. He played, you know, the entire game. We were down in the fourth quarter, but he still kept plugging. Some other guys that played real well is our sophomore quarterback, Michael Zakreski. He did a good job for us, you know, managing the game, getting hit a few times, but still, you know, hopping up and still being a good leader even as a sophomore.
Yeah, and as I was standing beside Miss Lamb and Charles Farmer and those guys and Chad Kirby, your athletic director, they were informing me that a lot of your skilled set players are a lot of young guys. So you're looking at a building program. You knew that coming in, and possibly in a year or two you could be really, really hard to handle with these guys that are getting a lot of time under their belt as your quarterback is being a sophomore. So we look forward to that. Right now, we're gonna talk about the upcoming game with you guys. I want to speak real briefly before we go into break about game film and film swapping. I'm a basketball coach, and you know, the way the basketball situation used to go when we switched game film is that you literally would have to go 3 hours away behind somebody's back in a dark mission to get film because you didn't want the other team to find out, especially if it was somebody in your district. And now with technology being the way it is, we have a system called Huddle that you guys both use and that predominantly everybody in the state uses. So it's a click of a button. I am now sharing game film with you guys. So when you go through the game film sharing, and prior to even before the technology, football was always notorious about changing and exchanging film on a Sunday before the game of the week with the host school, which I find humorous because it's the exact opposite in basketball. So as we go into film study, what are we looking for, Coach Rathbone? What are we looking at?
As far as what are we looking at for the other team?
Yes.
Well, we always start out by looking at personnel first. You know what kind of size they have, what kind of speed they have, trying to get a roster and looking at what they do. And then we go down to looking at what they run. You know, trying to look for tendencies. How often do they run the trap? How often do they run the power? When they're in this formation, or you know, how often are they going to throw the ball out of this formation? So you're really trying to get a tendency on the other team, and then you set your game plan based off those tendencies. You know, offensively, you know, we're going to do what we do. We're not going to change offenses midweek, but we may change what play we call if we know on third down they're pressuring or blitzing 90% of the time. So it allows you to get some sort of feedback on what they do and their personnel and their tendencies, and then we game plan according to that.
In that same vein, Coach Coleman, when do you get your guys together? Is it still a Sunday tradition to get your guys together as a staff and say, okay, let's look over the scouting report. Let's look over the team that we're fixing to face in this cage page. What day and how does that work with you guys?
Our coaching staff, and I'm sure other coaching staffs do it differently, but Huddle lets you work at home just a little bit. As long as you've got a computer, as long as you've got internet access, you can work at home and still shoot it to your other coaches. So what we do, usually get the film on Friday night or Saturday morning, and then each coach has certain responsibilities to do on Saturday. For example, one coach might label the opposing teams down and distance, hash, label that film that we got, and then get it all labeled, get everything keyed in the computer, and then we'll meet on Sunday, usually after church, and then we'll formulate a game plan. And then after that, you kind of get your scout. Like Coach said, you formulate a game plan, what's going on with the opponent and things like that, tendencies and things like that, and then get your scout team cards ready and stuff like that on Sunday.
Well, that's interesting. When we come back from break, we're going to talk about these game plans that Paige and Summit have for each other. Stay with us.
Hi, my name is Tanir. I chose this book because The pictures are really good. This is one of my favorite pictures, and you can learn some facts about them too. This is one of my favorite facts. It tells a lot about history, and it tells you different types of countries and like cities. And like German's like friend, he really likes the sport, and he wanted German Stelson to come with him and do the race across America with him. And German Stelson wins the race.
Welcome back to WCS Sports Connection Coach Preview Show. I'm Jeremy Qualls, Athletic Director of WCS, and with us is Summit Head Coach Brian Coleman and Page Head Coach Charles Rathbone. Speaking of, we left a segment talking about game film and game planning. So with that, we're going to go with our scouting report. And Coach, tell me a little bit about what you're going to do defensively against Summit's offense.
Well, really what we decided to do is go back and look at the Forest film from last year to get, use it, maybe hopefully use it as an extra film. And I know if they're anything like they were last year, and what we saw on film is they're well coached, very well coached, they're very well disciplined, they're a physical ball club. You could tell that they're young in spots, but you could tell they're coached up and that he's doing a good job over there. So the number one thing we got to do defensively, it's almost like our game plan last week, we got to stop the run. And that's where everything starts with us. We're going to stop the run, make them put the ball in the air. If they beat us deep, they beat us deep. But hopefully that's what they're going to have to do. And if we can line up and match their physicality and be physical up front and use our linebackers and let them go make plays and tackle the ball carrier, then I think we'll be okay defensively.
So I expect, Coach Coleman, once we leave today, this show, before tonight's game and your walkthrough, you're going to work on the deep ball. Is that correct? To try to beat them. But in all seriousness, Coach Coleman, what are you going to do on the defensive side of the ball versus Page's offense, especially with Roberts having 128 yards last week? What is your plan of action there?
Defensively, we definitely have to stop the big play. Their offense is very explosive with big play capabilities, running back and quarterback, very great athletes. So we're just going to have to limit the big plays and try to make them drive the ball on us, and hopefully we can force them to make a mistake. We just have to limit the big plays definitely.
So on defense, since we're on the defensive side of the ball, do you sum up yourself as maybe one of those I like to attack from the edges and try to get some action going, or we rather kind of hit the gaps, step back, keep everything on the inside defensively of the ball, make them try to make a play, if you will, versus giving up and maybe gambling a little bit? What would be maybe your philosophy defensively, Coach Rathbone?
Well, I think that comes back to game planning and looking at those tendencies and what we think they're going to do, things like that. But I mean, I would love to be able to just blitz every single play and hit the quarterback in the mouth and tackle him for 8-yard loss, but we just can't do that. We learned our lesson last year, and that cost us some big scores last year. So
well, it's kind of like in basketball, whether to press or not, and it all depends on, first and foremost, it always depends on your personnel, whether you can get to the quarterback off the corners or not, or you're more of a conservative, okay, we're going to be fill up the gaps. Coach Coleman, do you have a philosophy on that? I understand, given that your personnel is dealing with that, but what would you like to do? Well,
you have to bring pressure from the outside and the inside. We're going to have to mix it up because Coach is a very experienced coach, and I'm sure Coach Daniels is I know he's a very experienced coach too. So you can't do the same thing all the time. You can't always bring edge pressure. They'll have something for that, and you can't always bring pressure from the middle. But you just have to be very disciplined in your gaps and not make holes. You can't have holes in your defense.
Well, you can tell Coach Daniels that I've been scouting him on film, watching these shows about how to conduct these shows. So I've been watching game film on Coach Daniels from last year. Looking on the offense side of the ball, let's talk a little bit offensively. What are we going to do? I know we've talked defense. What are you going to try to attempt to do offensively come tonight?
Well, offensively, it's the same thing we do every week. We're going to try to catch them out of position and hit the big plays. There's nothing better than a long 80-yard pass play, and it just absolutely destroys the other team. And that's, I know he's the same way. He'd love to hit those as well. But we're going to try to make sure we hold on to the ball. We're going to stay focused on holding on to the ball, make the right read, throw the ball to the right person. Don't force it in there. We don't have to force it. Get it into the hands of our players on the edge, in space, and make them tackle us.
As a coach, I know that just gives you fits because you want to be able to communicate with your player, especially your quarterback, about when a good time to go and when a good time not to go as far as a pass, as far as throwing into coverage, as far as making those decisions. What are some things that maybe you coach your quarterbacks with and tell them during the game plan when things go right and maybe possibly when things go wrong?
Well, we always tell our quarterback if the receiver's even, throw it. If it's a fade, throw it. Give our receiver a chance. Trust his speed, because the corner's out of place right there if he ever lets that wide receiver get even with him, unless he's just an unbelievable athlete that, a Deion Sanders type. So that's his first thing. If he's even, throw it up. Lob it up, let him get a chance. Matt Fernero, he's going to go up and make that play 60, 70% of the time. Otherwise, we keep it to one read. You read that outside linebacker. If he flies out, you know who to hit. If he stays, you know who to hit. So we try to put the defense in a predicament to where they're going to have to be thinking a lot. The best coaches will tell you that the best players, they don't think. They just react. They just go. They just go play. You don't have to think about your responsibility. Just do it. And that's where I think we're almost there after 3 years in the system of doing that.
What about your quarterback, Coach?
He's a sophomore. Mentioned him early. Michael Zakreski is a sophomore. And what we're looking for is just a game manager to command the huddle, to and I don't want to say not make mistakes, just control the football and get the offense in the right formation in the right play. So just be the captain of the offense.
So let's speak a little bit your game plan tonight offensively.
Offensively, we run the wing tee. We're looking to run the football.
Ground and pound.
Ground and pound. We're trying to ground and pound. We're trying our best, to control the clock. Our best defense is our offense right now. We think, 3 yards, 4 yards at a time. And what we cannot do is get behind the chains. We cannot have lost yardage plays. We cannot have penalties that get us in long yardage situations. We're just not built right now on converting those long yardage situations. So, we need to keep the ball going, keep the ball moving 2 or 3 yards at a time.
Well, I know against Spring Hill, your opening possession kind of went to plan.
Yes.
You didn't go 3 and out. You got, I want to say, 5 to 7 plays. Please forgive me, I can't remember how many. But you got quite a bit of significant clock out of that possession. And then all of a sudden, you're out. Spring Hill came in, gave the ball right back to you, and you kind of went back into your game plan, which went well for the first quarter. And then all of a sudden we gave up possibly a long run. It's kind of one of those runs that kind of deflate your sails. Yeah. But your offense, to me, what I saw, even though you weren't producing probably like you wanted to, was still getting the ground control, the clock control that you probably wanted.
Yeah, in the first half, I think we were trying to get there, yes, and then Spring Hill scored on a big run, and then we kind of get behind a little bit, and with you're dealing with a young team and a young school that these guys are just not used to coming from behind. So we've got to get our mentality, change our mentality where if we do get behind, keep plugging at it, keep working, don't give up. We can get there. You can still run the football and score points, so just because we get behind, we still have to keep plugging.
Okay, and moving on from tonight's game, let's talk a little bit about our districts and some of the teams that we'll face. We'll start with you first, Brian. We're going to talk about some of the teams in our in the district with Brentwood, Centennial, and Indy and those guys. What do you feel like? Who could possibly be the favorite to come out of your group on top of the region?
Yeah, it's a really tough pick because there's great athletes and great coaches in our region. Franklin's going to be a great team this year, as an all-around team. But then also you've got Ravenwood with Van Jefferson, who just signed with Georgia, so you got a D1 wide receiver right there. Coach Hester does an excellent job with them. You've also had Centennial, who's their wide receiver, has just signed with Missouri. So you've got a lot of D1 athletes, at receiver to play against. But it's definitely a loaded region with great players. So, but I think Franklin right now is picked to be the winner.
And up until this point, we have not seen Franklin. Tonight's will be Franklin's first game. They play Clarksville Northeast, and I find that very intriguing just because of the fact we've had a look at everybody in WCS, with the exception of Coach Webb's team out there at Franklin. But like you said, for those that don't know, Van Jefferson of Ravenwood committed this week to Georgia, and the finals that came down to Ohio State, Florida, UT, and Georgia, and he ended up choosing to stay in the SEC and going with the Georgia Bulldogs. Coach Rathbone, let's talk about your group. Paige obviously is outside of the city schools in WCS, so let's talk about your district and your matchup. Who do you feel like in your group that will be?
Well, the way they do the TWSAA now, they put like the 3A and 4As together. So we really feel like our district is the toughest one in the state.
Sure.
I mean, last year we had the 3A state runner-up and the 4A state runner-up. Both came from our district in Giles County and CPA. CPA's loaded. They loaded every year. Don't know exactly what they're doing, where they're getting the players and all that stuff, but they're definitely got some players that will play. The quarterback is good. They got an offensive lineman that's going to sign at the next level. Giles County's got Cameron Ordway, who's got offers from all the SEC schools. He's a defensive back, a receiver. So they're the two teams that we have to catch, the two teams we have to beat. Marshall County's got a new coach who used to be at Giles County, so they were very impressive this past week. They play Independence tonight, and I'm excited and interested to see how that goes. And so, last year on our schedule, we had 8 teams that made the playoffs, and 4 of those teams went past the second round.
Well, that's great.
So, it's a tough district.
It is.
So we'll line up and compete every week and do what we can do to be on top.
Absolutely. And looking on for tonight's schedule, we have Brentwood at Blackman. And we all know last week on Sunday afternoon that Blackman and Murfreesboro Oakland squared off on ESPN. So that will be an interesting matchup, just to say that Blackman has a little bit of that intrigue, that magic surrounding them right now for the Rutherford County schools, and Brentwood played what you were talking about, a tough opponent in your region, CPA, last week, and fell to them. Centennial will play Nashville Overton, and I know that Overton usually is predominantly athletic, and as you mentioned earlier, Indy will travel down to Marshall County, who has a pretty rich history in football and having athletes, and I know that will be a good matchup to see. Indy, how they respond to this Marshall County. I know for you for you to have game film on that will be very nice to see how Marshall County does. Fairview is the playing Camden at Camden, which is a big matchup for them. That could be a decider down the road whether or not who wins that region with Camden. Franklin plays Clarksville Northeast, and Raven will round out our schedule of games playing at Clarksville. I thank both of you for coming today, and giving us your perspective on your programs and tonight's game. Make sure you come out tonight. Summit will be traveling to Page. Kickoff time at 7 o'clock, and I wish both of you the best of luck. You go work on that deep ball this afternoon during your walkthroughs, and Coach, you work on your run defense, and I think it'll be an interesting matchup. I'm Jeremy Qualls, Athletic Director for WCS. Thank you so much for tuning in to the WCS Sports Connection Coaches Preview Show.
Williamson County was named after Dr. Hugh Williamson, a signer of the U.S. Constitution. The county was incorporated on October 26, 1799. The official seal was adopted in July 1968. The seal, designed by county historian Virginia Bowman and journalist James H. Armistead, was accepted by Judge Fulton Greer at the July 15, 1968 quarterly court term. It features 4 quadrants representing the diversity of the county. The upper left section depicts a flag and cannon which symbolizes the rich history in the county. The upper right quadrant shows a schoolhouse illustrating the importance of education. The lower left portrays a Bible in front of a church window which represents religion. The lower right segment shows farm animals denoting agriculture.